being an entrepreneur, I was in the rock and roll industry. And back in the 80s, I started studying with a man named Dr. R. Buckminster Fuller, best known for the geodesic dome. So in '67, I hitchhiked from New York City to Montreal, Canada to see Expo '67. And Buckminster Fuller's dome was the US pavilion there. So Expo '67 was the World's Fair on the Future, and Fuller was a futurist. But I didn't meet him there, and then back in 1981, I finally met him in Kirkwood, California, on a seminar called The Future of Business. And so I studied with him 81, 82, and 83. And I was a hardcore make money entrepreneur. And one day Fuller asked me, he says, "What's your life's purpose?" And I said, "Make money." And how did I know that was the wrong answer? And he scolded me, because here I'm in rock and roll, it's sex, drugs, rock and roll. I don't do drugs, but I was trying for the rest. And he goes, "It's a waste of a good mind just to make money." And I'm going, "What do you mean?" He says, I thought we were supposed to make money. And he just challenged my paradigm, the way I looked at world and business. He says, and I cover this in Fake, and the question he asked me, he says, "Why don't you do what God wants you to do?" I went, "What?" He says, "Look, humanity is evolving. And you have to ask yourself, what does God want done? Not what Robert Kiyosaki wanted done. What does God want done?" And he kind of scolded me in front of the whole class. I'm going, "So what's wrong with rock and roll?" He goes, "It's about you. It's your passion, but it's not God's purpose." I'm not really religious, I'm not pumping that. So the question, I had to ask myself, what does God want done in the evolution of life? And it came to me, I don't think God wants people to be poor. And today in the world, America especially, is this gap between the rich and everybody else. And I know the game of the rich. My rich dad taught me, you know it because you're the banker. The game the bankers and the rich play is different than what they teach you in school. And that's the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. My poor dad, PhD, stands for poor, helpless, and desperate. They don't know anything about money. And they're teaching our kids. And my rich dad was an entrepreneur who never finished school. I grew up in Hawaii. So all of the pieces of the puzzle, when Fuller scolded me back in '83, the pieces of the puzzle and my life started to come together. And I understood what he was saying then. He says, well, maybe we should stop ripping people off. It might be a good thing. And, the question I ask all over the world, what does school teach you about money? And the answer is nothing. And that's not a mistake. That's not an accident. I knew that. Most people know that. But the way to keep the poor and middle class working hard is never teach them what the rich know. So if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which came out in 1997, it's what the rich teach their kids about money, the poor and middle class do not. And I had already retired. I made enough money at 47, so I didn't have to work again for the rest of my life. And I said, now what do I do with the rest of my life? And so that's when I came out with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the cash flow game, because poverty hurts. I don't like it. And I don't like that our academic system's so corrupt. We know the banking system's corrupt. We know politics is corrupt, but academics is just as corrupt. So I just said, well, if exactly as Fuller said, what does God want done, not what I want done. Martin Luther King said it another way. King says, I just want to do God's will. So that's what I cover in Fake. What does God want done?